Shalom, giving honor and praise to the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. This is part 4, Israelites on interracial dating. Let's go, brothers and sisters, to the book of Genesis, chapter 28, verse 1. And Isaac called Jacob, and blessed him, and charged him, and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Now, hold your hand right there, brothers and sisters, and let's go back to the book of Tobit, chapter 4, verse 12. And let's remember something that we read from part 1 during this teaching right here. It says this: Beware of all whoredom, my son, and chiefly take a wife of the seed of your fathers, and take not a strange woman to wife, which is not of your father's seed. For we are the children of the prophets, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember, my son, that our fathers from the beginning, even that they all married wives of their own kindred, and were blessed in their children, and their seed shall inherit the land. So let that be noted. It says Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob married women that was of their own kindred. You understand? Now, keep your hand there, and let's go, if you will, to Genesis chapter 24, verse 1 and verse 3. And let's see what it says. And Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and Yah had blessed Abraham in all things. Let's go to verse 3. And I will make thee swear by Yah, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. So we see that Abraham was telling his servant, who was Eliezer of Damascus, that when he goes to get a wife for his son Isaac, that he is not just to get any old, just regular type of woman from around there. You understand? And then we see it also confirmed when Isaac is blessing his son Jacob and telling him not to deal with the women that's up and around there. Both cases being the Canaanites. You understand? Now let's see how they felt when one of their sons did that. Let's go, if we will, to Genesis chapter 26, verse 34. And it reads on this wise. Genesis 26:34. And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemat, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which was a grief of mine unto Isaac and unto Rebekah. So we have to let it be noted and understood, brothers and sisters, that even though Esau wasn't the son of the promise, just like Ishmael was not the son of the promise, it is still a grief of mind to the parents when their children was up there dealing with women that they should have not been dealing with. You understand? So that's very, very important to let that be noted and understood. Now, in the book of Tobit, it says that they were blessed in their children and they shall inherit the land. When you go, brothers and sisters, into the book of Ezra, chapter 10, you will see that the children of Israel that wound up dealing with women that was foreign women, after a while, their children were not inheritors of that particular land because that seed is not blessed. You understand? So let that be noted and understood. So, in continuing on with this kind of thing here, let's go to Proverbs 10, verse 1. It said, the Proverbs of Shlomo, the Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. So, one of the things to let it be noted is that when a son does something that's not wise, in this particular case, I'm speaking on the reference what happened with Esau dealing with the Canaanite women. It was not a nice thing in reference with his parents. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, if we will, let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 1. Because this is used by people saying that we should and that we should not deal with interracial dating. And let's see, blessed be the Most High, and gain some understanding concerning this here. Deuteronomy 7 and 1 says, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. when the Lord thy God shall deliver them up before thee. Thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto thy son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yah be kindled against you and destroy you suddenly. Brothers and sisters, a lot of people will go here and say, see, it's not saying that we can't do interracial dating because it just names those particular names right there. But what those particular brothers and sisters who don't like their own people fail to sit there and see, and I emphasize who don't like their own people for a reason, what they fail to see, brothers and sisters, is the fact that in verse 4, it gives you the reason why such a stipulation was made. And that stipulation that we see there is, for they will turn away thy son from following me, because of them dealing with their false gods. So now, if idolatry is the reason why marriages with these other nations in Deuteronomy 7 was forbidden, then should not idolatry be the reason why we should not deal with the women of these other nations that come out of the European stock of people? Because it was they who taught us Christianity, which is based upon idolatry. I'm speaking to my brothers and sisters, the house of Israel. It was they, along with the Ishmaelites, who was the ones champion on and making us becoming what you call Muslims of today, which is also steeped in idolatry. So now, if idolatry, and that is to say the worship of any God that's not the Most High God of Israel, if that was the stipulation as to why the people were not supposed to sit there and deal with those nations, then we should apply to the same rule to these people right here. Brothers and sisters, interracial and international marriages between Israelites and other nations is not encouraged. You understand? So let that be noted and understood. Now, you have some brothers and sisters who like to go to Isaiah 56 to try to sit there and say, well, let's see, there's nothing wrong with that because it said the stranger will come and be joined and they will serve the Father. And you know what? That's true. Being joined doesn't mean that you got to be married to their women either. Just admit it. You don't like your own people. That's all it is. Because for a person to have to try to go that particularly hard to try to justify their lust at the end of the day, that right there just goes to show you that it's unwise. You understand? So now, brothers and sisters, if we will, let's go to another quote that some people try to use in their misunderstanding to try to justify interracial and international marriages between Israelites and other nations. Let's go to Deuteronomy 21 verse 10. It says, when thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them up unto thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home unto thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will, but thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her. So with this portion right here in Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 10 to 14 is speaking about, is saying that if the Israelites go to war against their enemies and the Israelites come out to be the victors in the war, and they wind up getting captives from that, because that's how a lot of the ancient African and ancient black Asiatic nations got slaves or captives. They really wasn't so much into raiding people's villages and kidnapping and stealing. Just like when you go into the book of 1 Samuel chapter 17, the challenge that Goliath presented to the house of Israel is, if you bring a man and he slay me, then we the Philistines will serve you. But if you bring a man and I slay him, then y'all Israelites to serve us. War is one way in which different nations of the ancient world acquired slaves. You understand? Some people call it war captives. But now let's see, brothers and sisters, what this is talking about right here. It says that when you're dealing with this kind of situation, it says in verse 11, and thou seest among the captives a beautiful woman, that means it's only physical to the eye, and has a desire unto her, that means it's only in reference with your hearts, not in reference with your good spirit, and wouldest have her to be your wife. Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and shalt shave her head and pare her nails. There's a whole ritual that goes along with that. But you notice something that's the one of the key words that's lacking or that's not there, that is from verse 10 to verse 14. If this is supposed to be a marriage, is love. Love is not in there. That's very important to let that be noted and understood. And keep your hand there so we can gain an understanding. Let's go, if you will, to Genesis chapter 29, verse 20. So we can see what happens when a man loves a woman and wants her to be his wife. Let's see how some of the acts happen. Genesis chapter 29, verse 20 says, and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but for a few days, for the love he had for her. So when a man's mind and heart was he loves her, and then it turns from that to being in love with her and everything of that sort, whatever he got to do to sit there and make that happen, he's going to make that happen. You don't have that same energy and that same attraction with a woman that's captured in war. You didn't work for that. That's just something you just happened to be in war, and that was the spoils of war. There's no love in that. And this is why verse 14 fits perfectly in there, because it says, and it shall be, when thou shalt have no, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will. Because after a while, you got to begin to see, brothers and sisters, her head has been shaved. Her nails have been pared. You cannot even consummate that marriage until a month after that, after she bewails her mother and father. So if you're willing to go through all of that, when you got all the beautiful daughters of Zion and the children of Israel out there as a wife, you just wind up actually wasting your time, to be quite candid. Now, there's some who may say, but yeah, see, it says you can do it. It also says, not to be funny, a man can have 2 wives. It also says, not trying to be funny, in Leviticus 11, that a man can eat locusts. But brothers and sisters, just like a lot of people who are vegetarians come and bring to us, it says you can eat meat. But with this meat here, would you still sit there and care to eat that? Sometimes we have to use our wisdom. And brothers and sisters, to settle down with a woman who is in mourning of her family after your tribe and people done kidnapped her family in war. In her eyes, she's always going to see it as a kidnapping. You understand? And you were the victors of war. She's a spoil of war. If you want that to settle down with, you're going to get yourself a headache. That's not the brightest thing to do. So let that be noted and understood. Let's go, if you will, brothers and sisters, to Exodus chapter 21, verse 4. So we can see what happens when this portion right here speaks about a servant. Exodus chapter 21, verse 4. It says this: if his master have given him a wife, and she hath borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, but he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. So this right here just goes to show you that love is a bond and love is a tie. Breaking up the family of the servants is not the culture of Israel, like what was done to us in the southern states of America and in the West Indies and in South America, and the great enslavement that happened with our immediate ancestors in the Western Hemisphere when they broke up the family. That's not biblically lawful, according to the ways and laws of the nation of Israel. You understand? So I wanted to sit there and talk about that kind of subject matter right there and conclude, if we will, in Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter. We're going to go in verse 5. Deuteronomy 24, verse 5 says this: When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and he shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. Shalom.